Yeah, I'm totally muted. My bad. So, I am kind of like making fun of myself for this dress because when I first got it, I'm sitting here thinking like, oh, okay, this is like a little dress that I can frolic in, like go through a field of daisies in, and I liked it a lot because I don't know, it felt like a dress you're gonna go sit outside in, or like an Easter dress or some shit. But today I'm over here like, damn man, I look like a fucking trad wife. I look like a little house on the prairie ass bitch. I liked it more when I purchased it, but now that I'm wearing it today, I don't know if I like it. Um, Life is hard. We'll see how long this lasts in my wardrobe. Maybe it's a styling issue. But anyway, fucking apologies for my distraction, but we're here now. So, um, we're gonna go back through Google trial exhibits. I just haven't covered them in Two Shakes of a Lamb's Tail, and I feel like every time I go a minute without covering that, I have a hard time recapping it and remembering what the fuck just happened because so much goes on in the material, Like, I mean, I remember the bride, but I have a hard time giving you some specific details. But anyway, so what we've been going over is the Google Search Monopoly trial exhibits. And Google does have two monopoly cases, which is why I keep distinguishing just to make sure we're all clear. Because for the trial exhibits and the trial coverage and the actual legal documents so far, I've only covered the search monopoly case. But I have covered news reporting and commentary about both cases so far, the search monopoly and the ad technology side. So there's two cases out. The search monopoly was filed in the initial complaint 2020, and that went in Judge Mehta's court, MEHTA. And then there was the other one, the ad technology. I think that was filed 2023, if I'm not mistaken, but I actually can't remember the year all of a sudden off the top of my head right now. But that was filed in Judge Brinkema's court, Brinkema. So there's two different cases, two different judges. So today we are in the search case, Judge Mehta's docket, and we'll be going over some more of the trial exhibits. We have covered 108 trial exhibits. And if I counted correctly, because this is a lot of shit to count, and I'm not going to double check it, fuck it, I think we have 109 more to go. So after this live stream, we'll be over halfway done. And I had thought that I was halfway done before because of how far down I was with scrolling through the page. But when I went and actually counted it, I realized I'm just halfway through the page, but not necessarily halfway through the exhibits, if that makes sense. So yeah, fucking previously I had thought I was like halfway, I said that a few times, but then the last stream I realized I wasn't. So, but here we actually will be after this one. But yeah, so we did 3 trial exhibits last time, so I'm gonna roll my intro, I'm gonna recap those, and then we'll just see how many more we can get through today. And thank you for joining me. Yeah. Hi, my name is Alexis, also known as Lexi or Deaf Child. I was born deaf, hard of hearing. I began doing business as Deaf Child 2013, marketing 2011, sales 2009. I've earned 50 plus certifications in marketing and sales. My Bachelor of Science from Loyola University, New Orleans, with a music industry studies major and a business administration minor. Deafness runs in my family genetically. Speech is not fully accessible to me. Anyway, I'm here to bitch about whatever the fuck is on my mind. So here we go. Visit my site at noladeafchild.com. Okay, so last time we just did a few trial exhibits because a couple of them just took way longer than I thought they would. So that's the thing, like some of these trial exhibits, they're all relatively short or so, and I can get through like 5 to 10 of them in a stream, and some of them they're just way longer than I thought they would be, so we only get through like a few of them, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, so last time we went over an email between Jerry Dishler of Google and Anil Sabharwal of Google. So sorry, I am pretty positive that is likely pronounced very wrong. And it was a reply about imported SQV update. And so in that email, a lot happened, but the long and short of it, what really stands out for me was that they were saying that they were short a redacted percentage of queries, but they're ahead on ads launches, but they're short on a percentage of their revenue. So they were saying if they don't hit their plan, their sales team doesn't get quota for the second quarter in a row, and they miss the street's expectations again. So they were saying, at this point, that their sales team was struggling, and what stands out to me was the timeline of this. This was happening in 2019. Well, around 2019 is when, if I'm not mistaken, policies and I think some laws too, but things were put in place to where I believe it was Russia and Japan that no longer had Google as the only search engine default. And so the timing of this was the moment that they're no longer the default search engine in certain major countries, close enough, is when back in there's there's a issue with our revenue now. Why? Because that's what their revenue is based off of. So if I'm not mistaken, that's kind of what I was getting from all of that. And then we looked at another email between Joan Braddi of Google and Sundar Pichai of Google. And this was about Apple response to an extension term length. And the main takeaway that I got for that was basically that the Google team was basically trying to say it's Apple's responsibility to try and make their relationship better, and they were basically trying to say that they were doing good things by Apple, but Apple was the one not acting in good faith with them. And basically they were saying that Apple didn't want to have Google as the default. And so they were basically like, well, if they don't want us as the default or whatever, or if they want to loosen that grip, then they can go somewhere else for search if they don't like our offer. Was basically like the result of that email chain. And the timeline of this though was back in 2007. So at that point, Apple and Google had began revenue share and everything, but it wasn't nearly as locked in as it is now. So this is how that this conversation, in my opinion, is kind of like where that grip can begun being seen, if that makes sense. I said begun being seen, but the captioner did not get that right. Life is hard. Anyway, and then another trial exhibit that we went over was an email from Ashish Pimplapure of Google to Jamie Rosenberg of Google. And this is about something about Korea in 2 weeks, it says. And it says an attachment with Google document and meetings with Samsung. And basically in here, they have a whole conversation about them going to Korea and doing a meeting. But for the meeting with Samsung agenda, in the key point for it, they literally say that Samsung had pushed back strongly on their proposed terms for revenue share agreements, and that they would like a higher revenue share with no upgrade commitments and no exclusivity requirements. And so this was in 2015. So in 2015, Samsung was pushing back, but we can see in the next 5 years that the Google did end up getting their way with it. My captioner's not working all of a sudden. Hold on. So yeah. So Google did end up tightening their grip on, I don't know what the fuck is happening. Google did end up tightening their grip on Samsung. So before we get started, real quick, seem to be having like some sort of buffering issue as well. I don't know if anybody else is having this issue. I don't know, but whatever. If you can't see me, sorry guys. Maybe I'm gonna see. I might have to fucking redo this stream, I guess. I don't know. I'm gonna just keep recording because sometimes it'll fucking post and then it's there. But then sometimes I'll get these notifications and end up having to redo it all. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if this works. I'm gonna just keep going. Alrighty. So now we're actually gonna go through the trial exhibits. Some more trial exhibits. Is it just me or did now my webcam get out of focus? I don't know what that's about, but everything is breaking down on me. I'm getting notifications that my stream isn't working, my captioner isn't working, the camera's blurring up. This is fine. I said the camera is blurring up, not blowing. God damn, that captioner still did not get that right. Blur. B-L-U-R. There we go. Fuck. Shit. Okay. Alrighty. So, next up, we've got an email from Jim Kolotouros of Google. Oh, you know what? I didn't see the exhibit number. It's exhibit UPX0569. So we're going to look at an email from Jim Kolotouros of Google to Christopher Lee of Google. And this is a reply about feedback from Buniac. Don't know what the fuck that means or is about. And it's on Revenue Share Agreement 3.0. And it's from November 2nd, 2019 with an attached Google document. BC Google Distribution on Android Framework. And then it says GDAF, which is Google Distribution Android Framework. And it also says BC 19038. So yeah, and this was filed November 27th, 2023. So, and at the top here, I'm already noticing before I really get into it, it says attorney-client privileged. And what we've seen is in other documents, Google was instructing their employees to basically put anything that could be related to their position in the market as attorney-client privileged, which I find very interesting because a lot of it wasn't necessarily attorney-client privilege, but they were putting that on there so that they would be less likely to go through it, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm using the right words. Read my mind, something like that. Anyway, so this was an email between Jim Kolotouros and Christopher Lee, all of Google, and CC'd was Kate Lee. Alrighty. So it says, I included this in one of my lists of things to discuss with whoever is willing to listen. Thanks. And this was from Jim to Christopher. Before that, Christopher had said, and they keep putting attorney-client privilege on all of this. It says, okay, we'll hold the line and create an exec summary for early next week with the 3 options front and center as you suggest. And then it says, do you think you might chat with them live at exec circle? If so, I'll get it out Monday, end of day. And then before that, Jim had said, thanks for the update. Hold the line for now. I'd prepare and publish an exec summary for Don and Jamie on this early. That is, early next week, with the revenue share summary front and center because I know they want to close quickly and no reason to wait 2 weeks for the meeting if they say just get it done. Critical to the Moto Lenovo deal is knowing that we are buttoned up so that high-value devices or countries cannot be carved off and we don't lose tablet volume as well. The recommendation to Jamie or Don should be we want to hold the line. What the fuck am I saying? We want to hold the line. We know Amazon is floating around, but they can't offer a global deal. Who knows on Microsoft in Europe? We know confidential over 2 years takes us to contract. Would you prefer that we 1, hold the line indefinitely until we lose it, 2, get it done now so long as we are within headroom of payment capacity, or 3, allow Don or Jamie to be the savior to say, okay, we'll pay you more if it gets it done at the meeting. We will always get the last bite of the apple on this one, but I think from the 3 options above, they each have an equal profitability. Why am I saying profitability? You know what's on my mind. They each have an equal probability of being the preferred choice. I'd offer around redacted, and if that doesn't get it done, they are free to escalate, but no promise it will make any difference. Does that make sense? Thanks. And then it says, I'm distracted because, sorry, I keep getting these notifications on my back end here about my YouTube stream is not working, but I don't know, but it's like, I think it's still recording and I don't really know how to fix it. I think y'all can't really see me live right now, but whatever, because it's like buffering and not receiving signal or some shit, but I think it's still recording, so we're just gonna see how this processes. I'm so distracted. Trying to focus. I'm gonna fucking focus. Alright. And again, every single one of these emails has privileged or attorney privileged at the very top of it. So then Christopher Lee had said to Jim's last email there, and it said Buniac's feedback. So I guess that's a last name. I don't know. It said Buniac saw the RSA proposal. I think there is alignment on many things, like the payload and even updates ask, but he is willing to go to bat on the money piece. He wants more, willing to discuss in person himself with Don, you, Jamie if needed on November 14th when he's here in MTV. His feedback was that the button on redacted devices cost redacted an additional BOM. They are on track for redacted and RSA payments for 2019 and growing each month without this additional BOM cost. Our offer that we sent them the term sheet for Our offer that we sent them the term sheet for was around redacted USD, guaranteed, and if they do all of the updates, up to redacted on average a year. Said that they were also growing aggressively in countries they think we monetize well in search, like Japan and Western Europe, have recent ranging decisions to back this up. Believe 5G and Foldable is the perfect storm for them to make some traction. Also said Amazon is reaching out to them a lot for bigger deals and never know what Microsoft is going to do in Europe. Back channel. Around redacted more over the course of the 2 years would make these concerns go away. My response to Eric to make sure Buniac is aware. Button is foundational to the deal. Would not have offered anywhere close to the package that we did without it. Should we think about whether other companies could offer the holistic global deal that we can? And we are looking for partners to have broad global alignment across the entire portfolio. May want to think about if other companies can also take care of the redacted install base that has been built up. Eric understands these messages. For us to discuss, we do have an extra redacted built into the RSA. Ask for stuff like this to go from redacted over 2 years and still be below BC guidance and within approval, and the model supports the return on investment case. Redacted may also be willing to bet on themselves and set the baseline value of their performance to be up a redacted percentage globally. For example, their last redacted activations were redacted devices. They may be willing to say that they'll get to redacted devices as the baseline number that we would base our mitigation plan against. What do you think? My recommendation is to consider making them whole on this and provide the extra economics, but make sure we land really well on everything else. Just wanted to make you aware of the latest and happy to chat live. And then it's redacted. And then when you scroll down, it says, of course, privileged and confidential, do not share outside of Google. I mean, I guess because it's a negotiation, they're able to legally, like this legally actually might count. You know what I mean? As the attorney-client privilege. Every time I see the attorney-client privilege everywhere, though, I'm like, okay, is this bullshit or should this actually be privileged? And I'm like, okay, I actually can kind of see, you know, how legal business negotiations and all of that should have some attorney-client privilege and shit like that. But anyway, so BC Google distribution on Android framework, GDAF. Every time I see BC, I just think birth control. But is this British Columbia? I don't fucking know. But anyway, it says submitted on October 1st, 2019. And the meeting date was October 3rd, 2019. Okay, so basic informations for their representatives. Honestly, I think it's like probably like usernames or some shit, because some of this looks like first and last name like in different orders, or partial first and last names, but some of it is their full name. But anyway, it said Jadson T or some shit like that. Sorry. Or is it J Adson T? I don't know. Sugawara, Lee Christopher, John Gould, A. Kartash, I don't know if I'm saying that right, that's probably wrong. Emily Chen, Ethan Young, and Jean Young Bake. I think I said that wrong. The primary presenter is Lee Christopher, and the reason for escalation is pricing or rev share. The products, Android revenue share agreement. The organizations are platforms and ecosystems. The region is global. Let's see. Okay, and then it looks like the term length and the ask are redacted, and so is the rest. It says not reviewed for confidentiality. And then the rationale, partner overview, and financial summary are redacted. The guarantees to the partner is redacted. Guarantees from the partner, partially redacted. It said redacted from partner will be Google forward devices with some potential carve-outs for the full term of the contract, not to exceed a redacted of the total volume of non-carrier controlled devices. And then it's redacted. And then it says not reviewed for confidentiality. The exclusivity, it says team is targeting to secure all exclusivity provisions from the Google forward tier. And then it is not reviewed for confidentiality or whatever. Okay. And then finance is something on here, but it's redacted, but I guess they want us to know that it's an element of this deal, but we can already see that. And the rest of that was redacted. So over half of this shit was redacted. But from what we can tell, it looks like this one fucking guy whose name I don't think I'm saying right. Buniac? I don't know. I'm gonna call you Brainiac, alright? This Brainiac dude basically was pushing back on Google, it looks like, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't know who the fuck Brainiac is, to be honest. But it looks like he was asking for more money from the revenue share agreement. And what we know about the revenue share agreement is that's the contract that Google used to lock these people into exclusivity with them based on getting money. And some other terms, and not always exclusivity depending on who they were negotiating with. But in a nutshell, let's just generalize it here. Close enough, fuck it. You know what I mean? I feel like this braid did not help with the little house in the prairie shit. But I keep pulling out my hair, so sacrifices must be made. Anyway, next up we got boop, UPX 0570, and this is an email from Bruce Sewell of Apple to Joan Braddi of Google et all. And it's a draft term sheet from November 16, 2012 with attached Google document, draft heads of agreement, Google and Apple. And it's from those, I cannot speak, November 16th, 2012. And this was filed November 4th, 2023 with the court. Sometimes these dates are wrong, but whatever. Interesting. Okay, so too far. So fucking Bruce of Apple had emailed David Drummond of Google as well as Joan Braddi of Google about a draft terms sheet. I feel like I can't speak today. Nothing's coming out right. I don't know what the fuck. Yeah, whatever. It's fine. You don't need to hear what I'm saying. Okay. It says, here's a very early effort. There are many open issues to be sure, but hopefully this helps us identify places where we need more discussion. Thanks for the meeting today. Very useful. Send me whatever questions you have whenever they come up, and we will try to get you your answers as soon as possible. Just bear with us as we are officially closed next week. Regards, Bruce. And then attached to that, it looks like a draft heads of agreement between Google and Apple. Except for there's no M in this agreement, so it just says agreement. I don't know. Anyway. It says, this term sheet is for discussion purposes only and is not enforceable against either party. This term sheet does not necessarily reflect the final positions of the parties and does not necessarily contain all matters upon which agreement must be reached with respect to the transactions outlined below. And then it's fucking redacted. It looks like items number 1 and 2 are redacted because here we get to see item number 3, search. License. License to integrate Google search services in all Apple products, services, and websites. Default. No obligation to use Google search services or to make Google the default. Revenue share. Apple's revenue share would be redacted of Google's net revenue from referral traffic. The revenue share would apply to all traffic directed to Google from any Apple integration of a Google search service. Attribution. Apple integrations of Google search service would indicate that the search results are provided by Google. Term. And then term is item number 4. We're moving to the next item, term. And then it's redacted strategic agreement. Google would be obligated to continue to provide service to end users of versions of Apple products and platforms that started shipping during the term. So, in this situation though, in this agreement, you can see here that the revenue share is not contingent on Google being the default for Apple. Which is something that I have not seen in any of their documents. I've never seen that before. This is from 2012 though, so I think that's interesting. November 2012, I was a freshman in college then. Just thinking about my mindset. What was I doing? Who was I? Where was I? You know? Anyway, okay. So, in November 2012, at that point, they were not the default or anything like that. But if I'm not mistaken, I believe by 2020 they were. So I wonder at what point that happened. I think that happened, if I remember correctly, somewhere between 2017 and 2019. Excuse me, let me just... Shit, what was my question in my head? Okay, so Google says that Google is the default search engine for Apple's Safari browser for many years. Maybe this relates to like the placement of where they're the default to, because they could be the default in a lot of, there's a lot of places. Like there's the browsers, there's the apps, then there's search engines within apps and devices, so there's a lot here. So who knows? Anyway, but at 2012, so we know for sure by 2025, because we just Googled that and saw that by 2025 for sure that there was some default placement attached to these agreements. But at 2012, that wasn't the case. And it's interesting to me, it's just standing out to me because this is the very first time any of these documentations that I'm seeing Google not having initially pushed for that in the writing material. So I'm curious as to what changed between 2012 and now for Google to do that. Would that be the, I know that, I remember when they were talking about Siri and voice search, that they were worried about Siri using search results from other places. I remember seeing that in our earlier evidence reviews, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm wondering if that time frame is what kicked that in. Who knows for sure though. But yeah, let's see. I think I have time for like maybe a couple more, depending, or give or take, seeing how long. You never know with these. I might only have time for one more, depending on how long this is, but we'll see. So next up, we've got UPX05AO, and this is an email from Christian Cramer of Google to Ruth Porat of Google et al. Board a BC deal review agenda for Tuesday, September 5th at 8:30 a.m. Pacific Time and Wednesday, September 6th at 8 a.m. Pacific Time, September 5th, 2017. And this was filed November 15th, 2023. So, alrighty. So it's from Christian Cramer. These are all Google employees, it looks like. So it's from Christian Cramer. It's to Ruth Porat and Kristen Reineke. I don't know if I'm saying this shit right. And the subject is for the BC deal review. And CC, we've got Helen Sewell, Stephen Hun, Christina Bida, Benjamin Friedenson, Yuki Sugawara, Alistair Canal, and Michael Rozak. I don't know if I'm saying those names right, so sorry. Anyway. And of course, it's attorney-client privileged and confidential. So here it says, hi Ruth and Kristen. The Android team is, it says it bringing, but I'm wondering if they mean is, if that was a typo. I'm going to say it like that. The Android team is bringing the renewal of the Samsung mobile search revenue share deal to BC tomorrow, Wednesday. And then attached, it looks like we have linked here the deal document and supplemental deck. And then it says, please see below key terms and finance perspective. Context. I think you are largely familiar with the recent deal negotiations from Samsung. Also from the Samsung search agreement status update that you received from Jamie on July 20th. See also a copy of the note below, my signature for your reference. I will still put some context here. Please disregard if too much. The previous Samsung revenue share deal expired about 2 years ago in 2015, and we have been extending that deal month to month. Since then, as we negotiated a new deal. A deal was approved by BC in November 2015, and a deck is linked here. And it says, with an initial proposal of redacted gross revenue share on installed base, redacted on new devices, and an additional redacted on devices with carrier client IDs and additional fallback options. Since then, the deal team has been negotiating with Samsung with challenges in alignment first on the revenue share amount. Samsung felt that the options presented were not financially favorable enough. Then on assistant and security updates, which are new considerations. Samsung signed a new mobile application distribution agreement earlier this year. MADA is a license for Android device manufacturers to pre-install some of Google's apps and APIs and ship these apps with their device. Samsung's MADA requires that Google Services app am I saying that right? The GSA app is preloaded. The widget is preloaded on the default. Is it? Oh, Google search app, I think. Actually, I forgot what the fuck they mean by GSA. I'm gonna have to look that up. And then it says the widget is preloaded on the default home screen. Google Hot Word, OK Google, is enabled to invoke Google Assistant. And long press on home defaults to Google. Is GSA at Google search? God damn it. Google, help me out. Shit, fuck. Apparently it can refer to several different ones. So you know what? Who knows? I'm not guessing. Let's keep going. And then it says components of the deal. Samsung gets ad revenue share, a redacted of gross revenues, redacted of net revenue, after deducting redacted for expenses, also known as redacted, on both installed base and new devices. There will be a penalty of redacted reduction dependent on device model to revenue share if Samsung does not meet the security and letter requirements outlined below. Since Samsung currently is behind on their security updates, they have agreed to an initial revenue share of redacted of net after deducting redacted for expenses, which means Samsung will initially get a redacted lower payout. The percentage will be increased to redacted of gross revenue upon written confirmation from Samsung that the security requirements have been met, followed by confirmation from our security team. Oh, Augusto said, deaf people's speech aren't perfect. Still not good reading or pronunciation or spelling. You're doing great with your speech. P.S. Been busy. Dude, I've been busy too. And I'll just mentally ghost people for months at a time. I got into a car accident and, I don't know, sometimes, because, I've been in various accidents throughout my life, and sometimes I just feel like the more I get hit on an impact, the longer it can take me to recover. And even if it's, not that bad of an accident, your body still absorbs that shock, so even if, the accident didn't actually, I don't know, because this is a type of hurt, but in comparison to an accident, severely hurt anybody or anything like that, I don't know where I'm going, I'm sorry, but, you can have, a little bit of whiplash or a little bit of sore body pain from any accident, and it's still pain, and it does still hurt, but that's not really considered as much of an injury as it could be from all the other fucking things that could go wrong from an accident, you know what I mean? So I'm totally fine, but I felt like the last year going through everything that I've been going through, I've just been, processing and struggling, and I really, just didn't answer anybody for, a year, and I still need to catch up, and so now I'm socializing again, and, I see people, and they're like, I haven't seen you in, a fucking year, bitch. Where the fuck have you been? And I'm like, oh, hey, how are you? Oopsie. Anyway, sorry, but, so we've been looking at this Samsung document, where we're looking at the deal, components between revenue share agreement of Google and, Samsung using Google Apps in order to get revenue from Google. And so I forgot the year that this deal is from. Let me see. This is from 2017. And so yeah, so back in 2017, between 2017 and 2019 is when I believe that was the time frame of voice search getting more and more popular and common. And earlier in our exhibit, we had seen where around the time that Siri was becoming very popular was when Google was freaking out about if Siri was using them as the search engine or not. And around that time period when voice search was expanding is when we saw, or have seen, in my opinion, Google really lock in with all of these people, where prior to this, as we just saw with Apple back in 2012, they were not doing revenue share based on exclusivity. But since then, we have seen almost all of their agreements be contingent on exclusivity. So I'm finding that interesting. But yeah, so let's see, where were we just reading? I honestly fucking can't remember, I forgot. Life is hard. So anyway, I'm gonna just keep reading some shit. I don't know if this is right, but this is where I think we are. So transaction revenue share. Once exceeding a redacted threshold, estimated in good faith, Google will pay partner a redacted, and parties will discuss in good faith whether transaction revenues shall be subject to revenue share, and if so, at what terms. The team plans to sign the contract before the end of September with an effective date of July 1st, 2017. In exchange for revenue share, Samsung has agreed to the following. Search. Google as default search engine with exclusivity. Samsung browser and keyboard cannot be enabled with Bixby. Without this, enabling may lead to siphoning off of search queries to other providers. Assistant. Third-party assistant protections. For example, third-party hotword cannot be enabled out of the box. Includes two screens. Why say includes with an S? Whatever. Include two screens in the setup wizard for Google Assistant. Google Set is only search backfill provider for Bixby, non-Q&A. Search queries may be backfilled by other providers, for example, Expedia for travel questions. Security and letter updates. For flagships, S and Note series. You know, I had the Samsung Note, and I love that shit because I would wake up in the middle of the night and I could just scribble my ideas manically, and you don't have to see shit and have my notes for the next day. Versus now without my note, you know, I gotta wake up in the middle of the night. I have to choose between turning on the light or writing on a piece of paper with the light off and seeing if I can read it the next day. Or I have to actually look at a fucking screen in order to write my ideas down. You know, because like I wake up in the middle of the night and like I have these ideas and I want to fucking write it down, because if I don't, then I'll fall asleep and I forget it the next day and I'm like, fuck, what the fuck was that? Because I'll remember having the idea, but I won't remember what it was. But yeah, so then like, yeah, I really liked my Samsung Note. I don't know how I got. Well, whatever. We're gonna keep going. My bad. Anyway, fucking. And then it said, for high volume devices, A and J series excluding J1, quarterly update for redacted years, and then other. Daydream will be supported in flagships. For example, Note 8 and Note 9. Deal economics. Actually, I think I had the Note 9. Was it the Note 8? No, I think I had the Note 9. Anyway, deal economics. The deal term is redacted years. Over this time period, under the old deal, we would have paid redacted in revenue share. With the new proposed deal, we anticipate an incremental payments of redacted for a total of redacted in revenue share. Estimated search revenues for this time period through Samsung is redacted. And then, guess what? It's redacted. And then here it says redacted reduction in payments while the install base is at redacted revenue share for redacted months after deal signing. Oh fuck, I missed this. It said, before that, it said note there is potential redacted reduction in payments. Fuck. I'm burping. Okay, whatever. Say Coca-Cola. Okay, so anyway, finance operations. As long as Samsung is maintaining security compliance, we can leverage our existing processes for revenue share deals. However, the process to monitor security compliance and apply revenue share penalties though consistent with the standard revenue share agreement template, requires ongoing manual review from BD, I'm assuming they mean business development, engineering, and accounting to operationalize. This does come with the typical burden of manual processes and the associated risks for accuracy and consistency of tracking. No system is able to support transaction revenue share. There is ongoing work with assistant teams to build a suitable tool, but the work will be done manually by accounting at the outset. Risks and mitigations. The proposed deal does not make us default on hardware buttons. Bixby will continue to be invoked on the hardware button and may divert queries from Google to Bixby. Google Assistant will be preloaded on the device via MADA, already signed, with long press on Home defaulting to Google. Bixby search boxes are allowed on Samsung devices, excluding S browser and keyboard, and can fulfill vertical search. What the fuck am I saying? Oh, that was it. And can fulfill vertical search. Browser and keyboard, for example, Gboard, are reserved for Google. Transaction revenue cannot yet be accurately tracked with no system in place to calculate revenue share. First, redacted under scope of agreement will be estimated by Google in good faith, which gives us time to implement necessary tracking. We set a precedent that transaction revenue via assistant or search will be shared with our partners before we have a firm understanding of the future economics of this business. Further, we agree to pay redacted against the first of transaction revenue before opening negotiations on future economics. This rate, redacted, does align with the rate we expect pay on search advertising revenue. However, BD team, redacted, has confirmed that he does not believe we are setting expectations of a specific revenue share amount on transaction revenue, and that the exact percentage, if any, we will pay on transaction revenues after the first, redacted, remains subject to negotiation with Samsung. Recommendation. I recommend approving this deal, as Samsung is a critical partner and it would be beneficial to maintain a commercial relationship with them. The proposed deal gives us protections for Google Assistant against third-party assistive services and preserves Google as the default search engine with exclusivity on Samsung devices. And then it says here again, redacted, and then best Christian. And here we see a comparison of core deal dimensions relative to previous deal and standard revenue share agreement. So, the topic here being revenue, in this deal, they're talking about a redacted percentage of gross. There was a new standard revenue share agreement for operating equipment manufacturers, and then there was a previous deal. But all of this is redacted, so whatever. And then next up for market share, for this deal, it says redacted with penalties for non-compliance of security updates. Well, it doesn't say market share, it says share, but I'm assuming they mean market. Anyway, and then it says above revenue share also applies to, and that's redacted. And then for the next part, the money is redacted here. I'm assuming it's money because it says redacted of gross redacted. And then it says carriers for reference. Redacted of gross redacted. So yeah. And then for search. So device exclusivity for in this deal is negotiated for the home screen exclusivity in Europe. I think Turkey and Korea is what they mean here. And Russia subject to agreement with Yandex as approved by FAS. Default on all access points. S browser in the hot seat but set to Google. And -1 screen is the Bixby home. And then for devices, and then in the past they had it, or wait, no. Yeah, that was this deal. And then the new standard would be for the operating equipment manufacturers, so the people that make the device, would be device exclusivity for the home screen and exclusivity in Europe, Turkey, and Korea, default on all access points, Chrome and Hotseat and default, and the -1 screen reserved for Google. Note, carriers may share the -1 screen with Google. And in the past, it was basically the same except for Hotseat, or no, Hotseat was there, except for the -1 screen and Chrome being in the default and stuff. But yeah, okay. And then next up, we've got assistant provisions. Alrighty, god damn, it's a lot. So in this deal, it says no third-party assistance on the DHA and -1 screen. I usually when I see DH, I'm thinking of the default home, but I don't know what the fuck the A means there. I'm not looking it up. Fuck it. It said with active hot word out of the box. With HW, I think that's hot word buttons or gestures enabled out of the box. Include 2 screens in the setup wizard back for Google Assistant. Google Set is only search backfill provider for Bixby. Non-Q&A search queries may be backfilled by other providers. For example, Expedia for travel questions. No Bixby button is allowed in Samsung keyboard or Samsung internet browser. And then for the standard for RSA for OEMs, it says no third-party assistance on DHA and -1 screen with active hot word out of the box, with hot word buttons or gestures enabled out of the box, and first-party assistance okay. And then previous deal, there are no terms here. Alrighty, now we're on security. So this deal for flagships, for example, the S and Note series, monthly updates for redacted years, and quarterly in the redacted year for high-volume devices, for example, A and J series, excluding J1. Yearly, what am I saying yearly? It says quarterly, not yearly. Quarterly updates for redacted years. And then for the OEM RSA thing, it said new devices must be updated quarterly for 2 years after launch. Requirement is phased in over time. And there were no relevant terms for the past deals. For user experience, there are no relevant terms for this RSA deal, but related to OEMs, it says optional apps. Gmail, calendar, photos, keyboard set as default. Android Messenger in Hotseat and default. Duo on DHS. Oh, I think that's default home screen, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know, but I could be wrong. And in the past deal, it said there were no terms for that. All right, and last, but not last, I lied. And then second to last, it said other product. For this deal, it said Daydream the support of flagships, including Note 8 and, oh, that's the same thing. That is the last one. It just looks weird because it's split between 2 pages. Okay, so the last but not least term, it says other product related provisions. And then for this deal, it says Daydream support of flagships, including Note 8 and S9. And then there were no relevant terms for the other types of shit. So whatever. God damn, that was a lot. Oh, fuck. This is a long ass email. But wait, there's more? Shit. Okay. So then it says an update from Jamie to Ruth and Sundar on July 20th for reference. Ruth, Sundar, Hiroshi asked that we provide you with a quick summary of where we are with the Samsung Search revenue share deal, in case you need it as context for earnings. Status is below. And we also have a deal summary here in the deck we reviewed with Sundar, Philip, and JG in early May. Jim, CC, is leading for us. Please let us know if we can clarify anything or provide more detail. Jim is also looking into when we can bring this to BC. Jamie. Status and timeline. We have verbally agreed to terms with Samsung, consistent with the terms in the deck. We expect to send them a draft contract next week and hope to have counter signature by end of August. We have, what am I saying we have? Well, it should say we have, I think, but it says we sometime. I'm assuming they mean we have some time. We have some time when the Samsung deal team pivoted its priority to completing a license agreement with us for our search backfill feed for the Bixby Voice Assistant, which launched on Tuesday. Back on track now. So, right here, they're talking about that their Google deal team on Samsung pivoted their priority for completing a license agreement when it came to Bixby Voice. And I had been sharing in this live stream my theory related to when Siri voice search came out was when Google shifted the default exclusivity with their RSA revenue share agreement related to Apple, right? And now I believe we're seeing the same thing as it relates between Google and Samsung and Bixby. Isn't that interesting? In relation to the timeline. Or am I wrong about that? But I don't know. But that's like, if I'm right, that's interesting. Anyway, so then for key terms, it says traditional commitments are in place. For example, search defaults on all access points. Search exclusivity on a device-by-device basis. Additional commitments include letter and security updates for flagship and high-volume devices. Daydream support for Samsung flagships and 2 setup screens as part of device setup for Google Assistant search. We also have third-party assistant protections. Cannot be on default home screen. Hotword cannot be enabled out of the box. Samsung is free to implement its own assistant, subject to a key condition described below. Note that even though we don't have a signed agreement, Samsung has already begun to execute on some of these commitments, such as Daydream and Assistant setup screens on Note 8. For a device to qualify for revenue share, we also required Samsung to use Google as backfill for Bixby. They had been seriously considering other providers. And then it says a redacted year term. For financials, the revenue share is redacted of net after deducting redacted for expenses for both new devices and the installed base. We eliminated the redacted tier several months ago because Samsung could not commit to Chrome in the hot seat and or dedicating the -1 screen to the Google feed. The revenue share in the current deal is redacted of net after redacted deduction. Projected payments are redacted over the next 2 years, which is an increase of redacted over their current revenue share rate. We are updating these numbers as the projections were run in April. Redacted will be paid on the installed base. Redacted on new devices. To keep focus on getting the deal done quickly, I am not speaking right, whatever, we'd like to be able to pay them the higher revenue share for July if we can get the deal done by end of August. Working with your team to confirm we can do this. Fuck. Risks. I fucking hate the SKS. I can't do it. In addition to the typical adventures that come from going from term sheet to long form, we are watching carefully for any signals of Samsung's plan to extend Bixby into other protected access points, such as browser or keyboard. This could meaningfully change the dynamics with those access points and our protections in the deal generally, so we are being vigilant there. And that was the end of Christian's mail. And then we see another forwarded message, and this was from Michael Murphy of Google, and this was a reply about the PC deal review, and this was to Jeremy Buttress. It looks like this is all Google employees. So CC'd, we've got Jason Pellegrino, Joan Braddi, Christina Bita, Dan Peters, Sridhar Ramaswamy, Dilip Schindler, Sivakumar, Venkataraman. I am so sorry, I'm positive I am saying your names wrong. Deal_review, Ruth Porat, Kate Bedock, I don't know, I can't see. Is that an E or a C? That's an E. Kate Bedow, Kristen Renike, Kent Walker, Marie Iwata, Izar Lipkovitz, Kareem Timsomami, I don't think I said that right, Paul Moret, Gabe Kronstadt, Evan Siddhartha, shit, I'm fucking up Evan now, damn. Strategic Partnerships, Don Harrison, David Rolfson, Sapna Kapoor, Iris Shen, Chris Gove, and Jim Kolotouros, Stephen Hahn, Christian Cramer, Scott Huffman, Alistair Canal, Yuki Sugawara, Hiroshi Lockheimer, Jamie Rosenberg, Matthews Lotkin, and Christopher Lee. It says, so it's adding the deal team to stakeholders for Samsung. It says, hi BC constituents. As mentioned in the agenda sent last week, we are sharing the materials for the Samsung proposal. For context, this deal is a follow-up to an approved proposal from November 2015. Please note that Sridhar is unable to attend at the scheduled time. We've scheduled a separate review with he and the deal team at 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on Thursday. Best regards, Mike. And it shows here the agenda, I believe. It says Wednesday, November 6th at, why am I saying November? The fuck is wrong with me? I know 9 is September. The fuck is wrong with me? Wednesday, September 6th at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I fuck so much shit up in these live streams. I'm gonna be like, damn, this bitch doesn't know how to read. This bitch doesn't know the fucking date. Anyway, number 1, Samsung RSA materials. Reason for BC review. Non-standard RSA. Top partner. Asks for BC. Requesting approval for mobile search revenue share agreement with Samsung at redacted gross on current and new devices. Projected payout. Redacted over redacted years. Representatives. Jim Kolotouros, Vice President of Partnerships. Stephen Hahn, Senior Counsel. Christian Cramer, Finance Director, Platforms and Ecosystems. Rationale in support of the proposal. Secures Google access on Samsung devices, including Google as default search or exclusive search, Google search backfill for Bixby, security and letter upgrades, Daydream support on specific devices. And then, before that, on Tuesday, September 5th, 2017, Michael Murphy had written, hi BC constituents. We have rescheduled today's deal review for Fairfax from 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time to 4:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And that's 7:30 a.m. SGT and 9:30 a.m. in Australia. To accommodate a more friendly time for the team joining from the, it says APAC. Doesn't that mean like Asia Pacific area, if I'm not mistaken? Anyway, it says the calendar has been updated accordingly. Special thanks to the Quorum's executive business partners for working to find a friendlier time. We will be sharing later today materials for the Samsung review, which remains scheduled for tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, with a separate review for Sridhar on Thursday. The team is based in the United States for that deal, so the time is suitable. Best regards, Mike. And before that, Jeremy Butteris had written, to add to Jason's points, Fairfax are also part of the working group for the subscription product Bez is working. So we would be helping with both revenue streams consistent with our global approach with premium publishers. Granted, more success on subscriptions could lower ad revenue with fewer total visitors and therefore lessen our upside potential. It would also lower downside risk. We would also get access to login data to help with targeting. And then before that, Jason Pellegrino had written something, but it's redacted. So this has a lot in it. A lot of it is boring, but also a lot of it I think feels redundant because even though these are specific terms for a specific time period, a lot of this information is material that has come up over and over and over in these trial exhibits. And so because of the technicalities and the, you know how you use the word legalese when you're describing like legal jargon? I feel like we should say technicalities. There's like I mean, I guess that's it, but it's like all of that concept is like, it makes this shit really boring to when, because there's so much of that, it's like a lot of people wouldn't scroll down and read to the bottom of this because they would get bored as fuck by the first page or two, right? But it's so important to me because when you scroll down this last page, this one line from Jeremy in this email chain, in my opinion, really sums up how Google is going into every negotiation that we have seen them do. Where it says that more success on subscriptions could lower ad revenue with fewer total visitors and therefore lessen our upside potential. It would also lower downside risk. So, when it comes, so they're basically saying the more subscribers they get to their services, the less money they need to spend on ad revenue to acquire those leads. So therefore, they, but at the same time, when you're not running ads, you get less visitors, so you don't make as much money as well. But you have less risk because you're not putting that money up for the ad revenue because you're getting that those subscribers another way, right? And this, in my opinion, is important because they are in control of ads in terms of search engine marketing, and they control it and the distribution of the information. But even they don't want to put energy into running ads, or they do, but even they are saying that it could be less risk to focus on getting subscribers than it is to run an ad. Isn't that interesting? But also, you can see them use this mindset in every negotiation where they are trying to utilize the revenue share agreement concept to secure the default placement. But yeah, so in this whole document, it's an internal Google conversation about their deal with Samsung. And we can see what the main takeaway that I got from this was where they're talking about Bixby Voice and Google Assistant, which is also voice search. So, and I think that's going to be the last one that I do today. From here, I think I'm going to sum this up because I'm just feeling really tired all of a sudden. You know what I mean? Yeah. Fucking. Man, I felt like a little woodland fairy when I first got this dress. I was like, I'm ready to go fucking skip through daisies and shit, And now that I have it on, I just feel like that's not the vibe, isn't it? It's like not the vibe. I'm so distracted by this dress again. Like, I thought it was like a woodland fairy vibe, but now I'm like, this is too trad wife, isn't it? Is this Little House on the Prairie, or am I like cottage core? I don't know. But is that the same thing? Anyway, okay, my bad. Focused. So, in the first document that we went over, apologies guys, this was basically an email chain between Bruce of Apple and a bunch of Google employees about a term sheet, that was drafted. And what we could see is this was from 2012, and in this draft term sheet at that point, Google was not negotiating for any sort of default placement with Apple at that point, tied to the revenue share agreement. Actually, I think I said that out of order. That's my bad, y'all. That was the second thing we went over. The first thing that we had gone over was the email between Jim Kolotouros and Christopher Lee and Kate Lee and all of them of Google. Those were all Google employees. And in this one, they were listing everything as attorney-client privilege. So when I first saw that, I was thinking that, oh, are you misusing attorney-client privilege again? Because they did do that in these filings. That was something that came up in court. But I actually do think this one probably does count as attorney-client privilege, because they were literally discussing the talking points for the contract term that they were negotiating. And I do think that, every business should have a legal right to seek counsel and have attorney-client privilege on the terms for their agreements that they're negotiating, So yeah, that. And they were also saying, though, that the Apple person that they were negotiating with, if I'm not mistaken, wanted more money. And so that was another thing that they were, from my understanding, what I believe part of what they were negotiating here was how much money would they give. And so this was from 2019. So I had accidentally done this out of order, but in 2019, who was this with? I can't tell who they are talking about. So the second document that we covered in this stream altogether, or the last document I just summed up out of order by mistake, was definitely about Apple. The first thing, that trial exhibit we covered altogether in this stream, it's an internal Google memo, but it's about Android. It's about Android. Okay. And then the last thing we looked at was the Google search negotiation talking points with Samsung. So we've been looking at 3 different deals today. We looked at what Google was negotiating related to Android in 2019. We looked at what Google was doing with Apple in 2012. And we looked at what Google was doing with Samsung in 2017, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm interpreting all this correctly. So, with Android in 2019, they were basically saying at this point that I believe at this point the revenue share agreement was contingent on default placement, and I believe at this point the people that they were negotiating with wanted more money, if I'm not mistaken, if I've processed this all correctly. And then we looked at the email, so that was with the Android deal. Then with the Android deal of 2019. Then with the Samsung, I just said that wrong. I keep fucking it up. Then with the Apple deal of 2012, the Apple deal 2012, god damn it. Back then, Google was not putting their revenue share contingent upon default placement. But then we see in 2017 with Samsung, they not only were having default placement contingent on revenue share, but also we see them specifically talking more about voice search. And I had said in this live stream, when we were talking about Apple in 2012, I said I know that by 2019 or so, Apple was locked in with default placement based on revenue share. And so I said that I had believed the difference between 2012 and 2019 was around 2017, where voice search got really popular. Well, then we see in 2017 in these documents, Google is literally talking about how they're talking about Google Assistant and Bixby, where they want Google Search to be the provider for these search for these voice assistants. You know what I'm saying? Shit, my bad. You know what I mean? I'm processing real time here. So yeah. So marinate on that. Let that. Think about that. Read my mind. I think you know what the fuck I mean, even if I'm not saying it right. Something like that. Close enough. You know what the fuck I mean. We talked about that shit today. We talked about a lot. And we also, again, highlight the fact that I was trying to go for like a frolic in the field look, but I really just look like a fucking trad wife. God damn, just ugh. Anyway, my bad. So, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate you guys. Yeah, if somebody likes this dress, please make me feel better about it, because shit, man. I liked it when I picked it out, but now I feel weird. Alright. I'm still wearing it though. I could have changed. I'm still wearing it, bitch about it the whole fucking time. Yep. Yeah. Bye. Thanks for watching. Join the loyalty program at noladeafchild.com/loyalty and check in during live streams to get points for rewards.